Welcome to Unsolved Files, and thank you for joining me for episode 1 of this brand new series. Since this is our very first video, I wanted to begin with a journey into some of America's most mysterious and unsettling unsolved crimes. Cases that shook communities, baffled detectives, and still leave behind more questions than answers. From strange disappearances to cold-blooded murders with no suspects, these stories continue to haunt investigators even decades later. So sit back as we open the files and uncover the chilling truths hidden inside America's top unsolved cases. On a warm night in 1992, in the quiet town of Springfield, Missouri, 3 women, Suzanne Streeter, Stacy McCall, and Cheryl Levitt, went to sleep in a house that should have been the safest place in their world. But by sunrise, they had vanished without leaving a single trace. The night had begun normally. Suzanne and Stacy had just graduated, spent hours celebrating with friends, and changed their plans at the last minute, deciding to sleep at Suzanne's home instead of a friend's. When morning came, friends and family grew uneasy. The house was silent, the front door unlocked, and all 3 cars were still neatly parked outside, as if the women were simply inside preparing for their day. Inside the home, nothing made sense. Their purses were on the floor, their clothes and jewelry untouched, cigarettes left behind, and Cheryl's dog wandered the house unharmed. There were no broken windows, no overturned furniture, nothing missing, and not a single sign of struggle, as if the 3 had stepped out for a moment and never returned. A disturbing voicemail had been left on the answering machine that morning, but it was accidentally deleted, erasing one of the only possible clues. Rumors began to swirl through the town. A strange van seen near the house late at night, a man spotted lurking in the shadows, a scream heard but ignored. Police followed lead after lead, but every trail dissolved into nothing. Years later, a convicted criminal claimed the bodies were buried beneath a local parking garage, and ground-penetrating radar even picked up 3 suspicious anomalies shaped like graves. But the city refused to dig up the structure, and the theory died in the dark. To this day, the house remains one of America's most haunting mysteries, a place where 3 people simply disappeared into silence. No evidence, no answers, no trace. Just an open door, 3 empty bedrooms, and a chilling question that has echoed for more than 30 years. How can 3 women vanish from their own home without anyone seeing, hearing, or knowing what happened? Sauter family disappearance. On Christmas Eve in 1945, the Sauter family home in West Virginia glowed with warmth, laughter, and the excitement of a holiday night. But before sunrise, that same house would become the center of one of America's most unsettling disappearances. Shortly after midnight, a sudden fire erupted, swallowing the wooden home in minutes. George and Jenny Sauter escaped with 4 of their children, but 5 others, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, were nowhere to be seen. As flames roared across the property, the family screamed their names into the darkness, expecting to hear cries, coughing, anything, but there was only silence. What happened next made the night feel less like a tragedy and more like a carefully planned mystery. George tried to start his coal truck to rescue the children, but the engine refused to turn, even though the truck had worked perfectly the day before. A ladder that always leaned against the house, gone. Barrels of water that could have been used to put out the fire, frozen solid. Neighbors rushed to help, but by the time firefighters finally arrived hours later, the house was already reduced to blackened rubble. And yet in all that ash, not a single bone, tooth, or fragment from the 5 missing children was ever found, something experts said was nearly impossible. Stranger details emerged. A phone call came to the Sauter home just before the fire, asking for someone who didn't live there. A woman's eerie laughter echoed before the line went dead. A neighbor claimed she saw a man watching the burning house from the road as if waiting for something. Another witness insisted she saw some of the Sauter children the next day, peering from a passing car window. A hotel worker reported seeing them with unknown adults, silent and pale. Even more disturbing, months later, Jenny found a strange object in the yard, a small explosive device similar to one used by the military, suggesting the fire might not have been an accident at all. Then came the most haunting moment of all. In 1968, more than 20 years after the fire, the Sodders received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photograph of a young man with familiar dark eyes and the same strong jawline their son Louis had. On the back were the words, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, ill boys, A90132. The family was convinced it was him, grown up and alive, but the sender was never found, and the trail went cold once again. The Sodder case sits in history as a puzzle with missing pieces, a night where fire consumed a house but left too many questions untouched. 5 children vanished in minutes, with no bodies, no remains, and no explanation that fits the evidence. And the world is still left wondering, did the Sodder children die in the fire, or were they taken, hidden away by someone who wanted them to disappear forever? 3. The Boy in the Box. In February 1957, on a cold, forgotten road in Philadelphia, a young man checking his animal traps discovered something he would never forget. A small cardboard box lying in the weeds, almost deliberately placed, as if someone hoped it would never be found. Inside the box was the body of a little boy, wrapped in a plaid blanket, his hair crudely chopped, his face bruised, and his identity completely unknown. He looked as though someone had tried to hide him, yet also prepare him, as if torn between guilt and fear. Detectives arrived and quickly realized this would not be a normal investigation. No missing child reports matched him, no parents came forward, no one claimed him. His fingerprints were taken, his face photographed, even sketched and sent across the nation, yet no one recognized the child. It was as if he had appeared from nowhere. A boy without a name, a life erased before the world had the chance to know him. Clues only deepened the mystery. The cardboard box had once held a bassinet sold by a local store, but more than a dozen were purchased and police couldn't trace who bought which. The blanket was cheap, mass-produced, impossible to track. The boy's haircut was uneven, almost hacked off, possibly after death, maybe to disguise him. He was malnourished, showing signs of long-term neglect, as though he had spent much of his life hidden away from the outside world. Over time, theories poured in, each one darker than the last. Some believed he had been kept in an abusive foster home. One woman claimed she had seen him locked in a basement, but her story fell apart under scrutiny. Another lead suggested the boy belonged to a wealthy family who covered up his death, but evidence vanished before police could confirm it. Every tip ended in frustration, every clue seemed like a shadow pointing nowhere. Despite hundreds of investigators working the case, the identity of the little boy remained a ghost. He was buried with a simple marker, America's unknown child. People left flowers, toys, and handwritten notes, as if trying to make up for the love he never received in life. For decades, his case haunted detectives, reopening again and again with each new technology, each new hope, only to slip back into silence. Then, more than 60 years later, modern DNA testing finally uncovered a name, Joseph Augustus Zarelli. The world finally learned who the boy in the box was, yet the answers ended there, because the mystery of how he died, why it happened, and who was responsible remains painfully out of reach. His identity was found, but his story is still missing its ending. And even today, people wonder, how does a child vanish from society so completely that no one notices he's gone until he appears in a cardboard box on a lonely road? 7. In December 2010, a young police officer training his search dog along the lonely stretch of Gilgo Beach made a discovery that would change Long Island forever. A burlap-wrapped body lying in the sand, hidden just far enough from the road that someone clearly expected the ocean to erase the evidence. Within days, more bodies were found, 4 in total, all arranged eerily close to one another, all wrapped the same way, as if placed there by someone who treated murder like a ritual.
Detectives realized they weren't dealing with a single crime scene. They had stumbled into the hunting ground of a serial killer. The victims were mostly women, all missing for years, all taken from different towns but ending up in the same desolate strip of beach. As investigators searched deeper into the thick brush and dunes, more remains surfaced: skulls, bones, partial bodies scattered across miles. Some belonged to victims no one had even reported missing, leaving behind questions darker than the shoreline itself. The killer seemed to know the land better than anyone. He chose a place where waves swallowed tracks, where wind erased footprints, where the woods muffled screams. Whoever he was, he moved with precision, dumping remains in the dead of night, returning again and again, as if Gilgo Beach belonged to him. Stranger clues appeared. Some victims' phones were used long after they vanished, calling families and whispering threats before abruptly hanging up. One mother received a taunting call saying her daughter was dead, in a voice so calm and cold it stayed with her for life. Cell tower pings suggested the killer wasn't a drifter. He was someone living an ordinary life, blending into crowds, smiling at neighbors while hiding the darkest secret on Long Island. For years, the case froze in silence. No face, no name, only the nickname the media gave him, Lisk, the Long Island serial killer. Rumors spread that he might be a police officer, a fisherman, a businessman, someone who understood surveillance and geography too well to make simple mistakes. Whoever he was, he watched the investigation unfold from the shadows, comfortably ahead, like a predator studying its prey. Then in 2023, the quiet suburb of Massapequa was shattered when detectives arrested a towering man named Rex Heuermann, an architect who lived just miles from the beach. His friendly exterior and normal family life hid disturbing evidence: trophies, phone records, and searches so sinister they sounded like the thoughts of someone who planned every step long before he acted. Even as he sits behind bars, investigators suspect more victims, more secrets, more hidden places along the coast he once used as his personal graveyard. And today, one question refuses to fade. Was Heuermann the only monster walking those beaches, or does another watch from the shadows, waiting for the world to stop looking?
6. In February 2009, on the dry outskirts of Albuquerque, New Mexico, a woman walking her dog came across something that didn't belong in the sand: a human bone protruding from the dirt, sun-bleached and brittle. Police arrived expecting a single tragic discovery, but what they uncovered beneath the desert floor was far more horrifying. As investigators dug deeper, more bones appeared, scattered like a macabre puzzle. By the end of the excavation, the truth emerged. This wasn't one victim, but an entire burial ground. 11 women and one unborn child had been hidden here, silently waiting for someone to find them. The desert had protected the killer for years. The wind erased footprints, the sand disguised graves, and the isolation made it the perfect dumping ground for someone who knew how to make people vanish. Most of the victims were young women who had disappeared from Albuquerque's streets between 2003 and 2005, their cases dismissed as runaways or forgotten in overflowing police files. But now, all their stories converged in one chilling location the media would soon call the killing field. As investigators studied the graves, a disturbing pattern emerged. The women shared similar backgrounds, similar struggles, similar vulnerabilities, as if the killer was selecting his victims with precision, stalking them, following them, choosing the moment to strike. The careful placement of the bodies suggested someone organized, someone patient, someone who believed he would never be caught. Whoever he was, he moved through Albuquerque unnoticed, hiding in plain sight while burying his secrets beneath the sand. Suspicion fell on multiple men, but one stood out: Lorenzo Montoya, a local man with a violent history toward women. He lived only miles from the burial site. He was caught on camera picking up women late at night, and just before the graves were discovered, he was killed in a shootout after kidnapping another woman.
Police quietly acknowledged that the murders stopped after Montoya died, but nothing could be proven. No DNA, no confession, no definitive evidence tying him to the desert graves. Other theories grew like shadows. Some believed the killer had military training. Others insisted multiple men were involved, working together or acting separately in the same hunting ground. Years passed, new leads came and went, fresh digs were done, but the truth never surfaced. The desert kept its secrets, and the killer or killers left no trace behind. Standing over that empty stretch of land today, you can still feel the unease in the wind, a silence that hangs heavier than the heat. 12 lives were taken, buried, and forgotten by the world until the sands shifted just enough for their bones to speak. And the most terrifying part is that the person who put them there might still be out there, walking the same streets, waiting for the world to stop paying attention.
5. In the spring of 1946, the quiet twin towns of Texarkana were swallowed by fear as a faceless predator began stalking the moonlit backroads. Couples parked along lonely lovers' lanes were the first to encounter him. A tall figure with a white sack-like mask pulled over his head, eye holes cut out in rough circles, breathing heavily in the darkness as he stepped toward their car. What began as small sounds in the woods would erupt into violence in seconds, and the townsfolk would soon know him only as the Phantom Killer. The attacks came without warning, always at night, always near the deserted edges of town. Victims described the same haunting details, the heavy footsteps in the leaves, the glint of a flashlight blinding them before the assault, and the breathless terror of realizing they were trapped with a man who said nothing, not a single word. The Phantom didn't rush. He moved with confidence, as if he knew the roads, the trees, the people, and exactly how long he had before anyone could reach them. As the bodies appeared, panic spread like wildfire. Doors were bolted, windows boarded up, and gun shops sold out within hours. People refused to walk alone at night. Cars zipped away at the slightest sound. Reporters swarmed the town and the police worked around the clock, but the Phantom always seemed one step ahead. Witnesses caught glimpses, a shadow slipping into the trees, a man sprinting across a field, headlights speeding down a gravel road, but none of it led anywhere. The killer's method was unpredictable. Some nights he stalked couples, other nights he crept toward isolated homes, slipping through the darkness with silent confidence. Survivors described the same chilling sensation. He watched them first, studied them, waited patiently before revealing himself in the most terrifying way possible. And every time he vanished into the night as if he were part of it. Hundreds of officers patrolled Texarkana, posses formed, roadblocks were set up across the region, the National Guard was even called in. Suspects were questioned, arrested, released, yet no matter how many men were investigated, the attacks continued until suddenly, without warning, they stopped. Just as abruptly as the Phantom arrived, he disappeared, leaving the town suspended between relief and dread. To this day, no one knows who he was. Some believe he fled to another state. Others insist he died shortly after the killings, and some whisper that the Phantom still walked among the citizens, blending into everyday life while the world hunted for a monster who might have been standing right beside them. The Texarkana Phantom Killer left behind no answers, only fear, the kind that lingers long after the footsteps fade, leaving a final question echoing across the quiet backroads he once claimed as his own. What do you do when the monster that hunted your town never truly went away? 4. In the late 1960s, Northern California felt like the center of a peaceful new era. But in the shadows, a man who called himself Zodiac was preparing to unleash a terror that would haunt America for decades. His attacks seemed to come from nowhere. Couples sitting in parked cars, teenagers enjoying a quiet night, even a taxi driver heading home after his shift, each targeted without warning,
each crime scene marked by the same eerie calm, as if the killer moved through the night with absolute control. After every attack, he vanished into the dark before anyone even realized death had arrived. What made Zodiac unlike any killer before him wasn't just the violence, but the way he demanded the world's attention. He sent letters to newspapers written in taunting, mocking language, calling the police stupid and daring them to catch him. Inside those envelopes were cryptograms, strange symbols, codes, and puzzles he claimed would reveal his identity if anyone could solve them. Some were cracked, others remain mysteries to this day, each message dripping with arrogance and an unsettling pleasure in watching people try to understand the mind of a phantom. The killer seemed to enjoy the spotlight. He described his crimes in chilling detail, bragged about evading officers, and threatened to attack school buses just to watch the city panic. Police chased lead after lead, a dark figure spotted in the trees at Lake Berryessa, a man calmly walking away from a crime scene in San Francisco, a shadow slipping between houses while sirens echoed in the distance. Every time officers thought they were close, Zodiac twisted away like smoke, leaving behind only another letter, another cipher, another reminder that he was still out there. Suspects emerged, men who matched the handwriting, the build, the voice. One suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, seems to fit almost too well, but no evidence could tie him directly to the murders. Others were investigated obsessively, yet DNA, fingerprints, and witness descriptions never lined up cleanly. It was as if Zodiac crafted a perfect mask, hiding behind conflicting clues and playful lies. He controlled the narrative, manipulated the press, and turned the entire region into his personal stage. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, the letters slowed, the murders stopped, and Zodiac faded into silence. Did he die, move away, change identities, or did he simply get bored once the world no longer feared him the way he wanted? No one knows. The case remains officially open, a puzzle with too many missing pieces, a name with no confirmed face behind it. In the summer of 1912, the quiet town of Villisca, Iowa felt like the safest place in America, a town where people left doors unlocked and neighbors trusted one another without question. But on a warm June night, inside a white wooden house on the edge of town, something unspeakable was about to happen. While the Moore family slept, parents Josiah and Sarah, their 4 children, and 2 young guests staying the night, a figure slipped silently through the unlocked door and began moving room to room with an axe in hand. One by one, he brought the blade down with a force so violent it shook the very structure of the house, yet no one woke in time to scream. When a neighbor discovered the home the next morning, every window was covered with cloth from inside, as if someone didn't want the town to see what he had left behind. The bodies were found in every bedroom, blankets pulled over faces, lamps removed from their hooks, mirrors and glass draped with clothing to block reflections, details that made investigators believe the killer took his time, lingering in the house long after the murders were done. The axe, cleaned but still stained, was left leaning against a wall as if placed there deliberately like a signature. Word spread through Villisca in minutes. People rushed toward the house in disbelief, only to recoil from the horror inside. Doors were locked for the first time in town history. Parents kept children indoors. Everyone began watching everyone else, whispering that the killer had to be someone among them. Suspects emerged instantly. A traveling minister who left town hours after the murders, a jealous former employer of Josiah Moore, a serial killer linked to similar axe attacks across the Midwest. Each suspect seemed convincing, each theory chilling, yet every investigation led to a dead end. What disturbed detectives most was how calm and methodical the murderer seemed. He ate food from the family's kitchen. He lit lamps throughout the home. He remained inside the house for hours while the sun rose outside, comfortable enough to wipe blood from walls and cover the faces of his victims like a twisted form of respect or control. The killer wasn't frantic. He wasn't rushed. He was patient. As years passed, the case grew colder, the theories stranger, the fear deeper. Some locals believed the house itself held the memory of that night, claiming footsteps echoed in empty rooms, lamps flickered without warning, and the faint sound of children crying traveled down the hall where they once slept. Today, the Villisca Ox murder house still stands, preserved exactly as it was over a century ago, drawing investigators, thrill seekers, and ghost hunters who swear the air inside feels heavier, darker, as if the house remembers. The murders were never solved, no weapon ever traced, no killer ever named. And the question that has haunted Villisca since 1912 still lingers in the silence of that small white house. How can someone commit such brutality, linger calmly among the dead, walk out into the morning light, and disappear forever? 2. In January 1947, Los Angeles awoke to a crime so brutal and bizarre that it would haunt the city for generations. In an empty lot near Limert Park, a young mother walking with her child spotted what she thought was a discarded mannequin, pale, lifeless, and perfectly arranged in the grass. But as she looked closer, horror washed over her. It wasn't a mannequin at all. It was the body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, a struggling actress the press would soon call the Black Dahlia, posed with a precision that revealed the killer wasn't just violent, he was deliberate. Elizabeth's body had been cut cleanly in half, drained of blood, washed, and arranged like a piece of art. Arms raised, legs positioned, a haunting smile carved onto her face. There was no blood at the scene, no drag marks, nothing to show where she had been murdered. The killer had staged her with such cold confidence, it was as though he wanted the world to find her exactly like this, to witness his work and fear the mind behind it. Investigators immediately knew they weren't dealing with an ordinary murderer. This was someone skilled, someone patient, someone who understood anatomy far too well. As the press swarmed, the killer seems to watch from the shadows, sending taunting letters to newspapers filled with cut-out magazine words, mocking the police and promising more chaos. Each message dripped with arrogance, as if he believed he was untouchable. Detectives chased every clue: Hollywood men with dark reputations, surgeons with hidden pasts, jealous lovers, mob connections, even links to other unsolved murders across Los Angeles. But every lead dissolved into fog. Elizabeth Short herself became the center of a media storm, painted as mysterious, glamorous, dangerous, while the truth of her life slipped away. Witnesses claimed to have seen her with strangers in bars, in hotels, walking alone down dim streets, each story adding another layer to the legend, but offering no real answers. The deeper investigators dug, the more the case felt like a maze designed by someone who wanted to be pursued, but never found. Some suspects were disturbingly plausible: a doctor who vanished after the murder, a man whose handwriting matched the killer's letters, a family whose secrets were so twisted they spawned entire books. All of them could have been the murderer. None could be proven. The more investigators looked, the more they realized how carefully the killer had planned everything, from the murder itself to the theatrical reveal of the body. Decades passed, evidence deteriorated, witnesses died, and the truth sank deeper into the history of Los Angeles. The Black Dahlia murder became a symbol of Hollywood's darkest underbelly, a reminder that even in a city built on dreams, nightmares can walk in broad daylight. And today, the same question that rattled investigators in 1947 still whispers through the empty lot where Elizabeth Short was found. Who was the man who turned murder into a masterpiece, and why has he remained hidden for more than 70 years?
Before we reach our final case, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These stories take deep research, time, and real effort to bring to you, and your support truly keeps this channel alive. In the early 1930s, while America battled the Great Depression, another kind of terror gripped the streets of Cleveland. A silent predator the newspapers would soon call the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. His victims were found in the city's forgotten corners, near railroad tracks, buried in makeshift dumps, or left along the edges of Kingsbury Run, a bleak ravine where the homeless and desperate sought refuge. What made these discoveries even more horrifying was the same signature found on every body: the heads, arms, or legs brutally removed, as if the killer wanted to erase who these people once were. The first victims appeared in pieces, scattered like discarded dolls. Some bodies were washed clean, others burned by chemicals, and many were so mutilated that identification became impossible. Police realized quickly they were dealing with someone who didn't just kill, he dissected. Whoever the murderer was, he had knowledge of anatomy, strength, and a calmness that suggested he wasn't rushed or panicked. He killed with purpose, precision, and a cold patience that turned Cleveland's poorest neighborhood into a hunting ground. As more torsos surfaced, 10, 12, 13, the city spiraled into fear. Families locked their doors. The homeless abandoned Kingsbury Run. Newspapers printed grotesque sketches of the bodies, fueling the panic that a real-life monster stalked the streets. The investigation grew so desperate that Cleveland's legendary safety director, Eliot Ness, stepped in, hoping his reputation from taking down Al Capone would help. But even he found himself chasing shadows. Suspects emerged, but each trail collapsed. One man confessed only to later recant. Another suspect escaped custody and vanished forever. Rumors swirled of a doctor with a dark past, a butcher who disappeared at the height of the killings, or a former medical student who enjoyed dissecting animals. Every theory felt possible. None could be proven. And all the while, the killer continued, leaving bodies arranged in ways that made detectives believe he was mocking them. As pressure mounted, Eliot Ness made a drastic move. He ordered Kingsbury Run to be burned to the ground. The shacks, the camps, the patches of forest, everything. Flames lit the night sky as the homeless fled, and for a moment it seemed as though the fire might flush out the murderer. But the killings didn't stop because of fear. They simply stopped. One day, they ended as suddenly as they had begun, leaving behind a trail of dissected bodies, but no answers. To this day, no one knows who the torso killer was. Some believe he died. Others think he moved to another city and continued under a different name. There are even those who say Eliot Ness knew exactly who the killer was, but couldn't prove it, allowing a silent truth to rot behind closed doors. What remains are the bodies, victims stripped of identity, scattered across the city, and stitched into Cleveland's darkest legend. If you want a full documentary on any of these cases, drop the case name in the comments and I'll bring it to you in detail. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more dark and untold stories.